What is up, Village? As you all see, your friend, your homie Damien Howard is here with another Village Talks segment. So elated and excited as I always am. Y'all know that I'm easily excitable, but uniquely today, Karen Van Ausdal, who I've known for the better part of at least a decade, from some of her work with CPS and then with Castle, and now in the space of philanthropy. Just super excited, particularly for this segment, because with Karen's vast experience, I think that there are some unique insights, and might I even say counsel, that we'll be able to glean from our time here together on this Village Talk segment. So, Karen, please jump in there, give us a bio, a sense of just how you're showing up today. We would love that.
Thanks, Damien, and incredible respect for all you have contributed to this field and just your friendship and camaraderie. So, I'm Karen Van Ausdal. I have spent my entire career really sort of at this intersection of education, human development, and community thriving, and trying to figure out how we sort of piece those pieces of the puzzle together in the hopes of having young people who can thrive and contribute in the best ways possible. So, that really began as an elementary school teacher. So I got to teach fourth and fifth grade and love teaching fourth and fifth grade because they are, young people who can have really complex thoughts, but are also just sort of lovable and you go home every day with a good story, right? And I was teaching math, I was teaching reading, and loved teaching those subjects, but really saw that I was most interested in sort of what kind of human beings are we building and learning from and having as our current and future leaders. So got really interested in, I sort of thought I invented the field of social emotional development, right? And figured out, oh no, that is a field. And really wanted to study and understand that piece of youth development. And so then I got to develop youth development programs, was working on the East Coast for a while and in Boston public schools, and really thinking about, what does it mean to have young people as leaders? What does it mean to make school spaces where we're talking about identity and agency and really enacting those things for young people at even, as young as kindergarten all the way through high school, right? And um, got to do some interesting work there, and then ended up coming over to, do some studying, got some degrees along the way, and ended up coming over to Chicago Public Schools. So I got to really work on building some new schools in the city, thinking about what does it mean to have real experiential, interactive pedagogy in our schools. And then I was very privileged to start the Office of Social Emotional Learning in Chicago Public Schools and sort of build up these structures and systems that really say, we know that school climate matters. We know that building social emotional skills matters for young people. We know that integrating those skills into everyday instruction is going to make that all the more meaningful for our young people, and thinking about discipline policies and what does this mean for adults, and lots for us to talk about. But so spent about 10 years in Chicago Public Schools, then got to do this work nationally. So worked with Castle for almost 10 years, thinking about, how do we make social emotional development part of the districts across the country. We know that this is about a systems question. That's not just like, hey, let's do this for 30 minutes a week on Friday, have a little lesson, and we're inoculated, right? Like we have to transform the way systems operate so that we're thinking holistically about academic, social, and emotional development. And so got to see some amazing work happening across the country and actually around the world. And now, just for the last couple of months, I have entered the world of philanthropy. I am serving in a Chicago-based foundation called the Polk Brothers Foundation, and really thinking about community thriving and how do we adjust and meet the needs of our city, and meet the needs where we are seeing a lot of inequity in our city. So.
Yeah, so it just baffles me. I'm at a loss for words, just trying to, okay, this year is here, this year's. I don't know how you did all of that by the age of 25.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah.
No, so no, this is amazing, and just again, super grateful for just partnership, friendship along the years here of knowing you. And just really at the top, you use the language of SEL, social emotional learning, social emotional development, a lot in your introduction. Again, here locally in the Chicagoland area, even helping our district to really, in a new, fresh way, implement some SEL strategy. And I wanted to kind of park there for a moment because we're in a unique place,
Mhm.
even as a nation in certain pockets, when we use the language of SEL. It's almost like that language is shunned. It's almost as if you go into certain spaces talking about you're an SEL or social emotional practitioner. You're going to get in a very real way closed doors and even policy enacted that's against utilization of SEL. So I just want to really pick your brain on just any thoughts that you have for us as practitioners who have over time based on some of your work and your colleagues' work at Castle, really like taken to heart that the social and emotional development of our kids is important. Even when I started my business, I named it SEL Plus, and
Yep.
all of that really feels like it's under attack right now. So I just wonder if you have any initial thoughts as we get into this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think here's what we know, right? There are decades of research and evidence to say that if you pay attention to the skills of knowing yourself, right? Self-awareness, understanding how to build relationships with others, how to take another perspective, how to persevere through challenging, whether it's a math problem or whether it's interpersonal relationship or whether it's something in your job. Like, these skills are what is going to help our young people make good career choices to succeed and thrive in their college career, in their workforce, in their personal relationships, right? That we have got to attend to these skills. And we have tons of research to say that if you allow the space and time to practice those skills, we can build those skills in our schools and in our out of school time and in our community spaces, and that those are the skills that are going to help students not just make it to college or make it to a career, but to actually be successful and to stay in college and to make it, to have a meaningful family sustaining wage over time. So the research, I think, is undeniable at this point. And we also have tons of research here in Chicago to say that if you attend to school climate, that is one of the most important things you can do to make sure that students succeed in your school, that principals who pay attention to that and attend to that, both for their adults and for their young people. You're seeing lots of rewards there in terms of the outcomes for young people. So local cities and municipalities have to make their own decisions of what you're calling these skills, what they look like. But the majority of states in our country have standards around this type of skill development. They are building it into curriculum. They are building into spaces, and we'll call it different things in terms of character development, in terms of social emotional learning, in terms of human development. But we know that if we want to set up our kids for success, they've got to have some time spent on these skills.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think us taking a moment to pause and call out where we are contemporaneously, and again, get counsel or fresh ideas, or if nothing else, encouragement that the research points to validating this work, is just always super helpful. So thank you there. Karen, what I've invited you to is a space that is called Village Talks. And that's intentional because in my own brain, and again, you've been a big part, even as a teacher, you leading SEL when I was in CPS as a teacher, just really kind of helping me to understand the value of that body of work. But as I got into it again as an educator, just understanding that my kids were showing up to school with a lot of things that were happening on the community side, even mental health matters that I didn't feel well prepared to address very early on, I started getting this sense that, man, the more we could like build up a village of nurturing caregivers, and I use the title in all of my work, mentor, to encompass all of these nurturing caregivers, and they can be trained and they can be supported and they can even be resourced to serve our kids, then that's only going to maximize the ability for these kids to thrive in the post-secondary ways that you mentioned earlier. I just wonder, how does that concept of village resonate with you, even when you think of, you called it out earlier, your interest in looking at not just schools, but then communities and figuring out how we can foster partnerships with the two in service to young people. Would just love to hear a little bit more of what you've learned over time, counsel even that you would give as we're thinking about this concept of village locally as well.
Yeah, I love that you chose village as your sort of grounding theme, right? I think it's to me, interdependence has always been sort of a North Star in thinking about what do I hope for and what I contribute to the world and what communities can give. So, this notion that my fate is bound up with your fate and that we have to be weaving together more closely. And I think schools have always been sort of a microcosm of this, right? I think when schools are operating at their best and highest capacity, they are operating like a village where everyone's strengths are brought to bear, where we see the connection to community and to families, and that, we are, I always also like the word ecosystem, right? That we are operating as an ecosystem where the health of one piece really is connected to the health of all the other pieces. So I think, and when we talk about social emotional development, we want all of our young people to feel a sense of identity, to feel a sense of belonging, and to feel a sense of connectedness at school. And when they don't feel that, it's dangerous. And that's when we see young people voting with their feet, right? They are leaving schools. We have very high rates of absenteeism that we're grappling with across the country, right? But when they do, you can see learning accelerated. You can see just the possibilities of what school can be, both for the adults and for young people. So I think love the village concept, and I think there is a movement around the country around sort of thinking of ecosystems of learning and thinking about school is not the only place where learning happens, right? That school can be a catalyst for all sorts of learning, but we need to connect young people to workforce. They need to see the value of their interactions at their places of faith. They need to see the value of the interactions in their sports, that this is all part of their learning and goes into making them who they are. So lots more to say on that, but I think you've hit into sort of the mood of what's needed right now.
Yeah, no, that's yeah. Just to your point, my mind goes so many different ways, and as you said, so much more we could talk about. And for whatever reason, I am just really drawn to your current post. What I keep hearing, and I'm not really informed about like, with any level of depth with what I'm about to say, is that philanthropy is really driving towards this concept of village as well and saying when we make investment, we're more so wanting to invest in entities and organizations that are willing to go outside of their silos, figure out how we can work together, figure out how there could be interconnectedness. So again, with the current post that you have driving philanthropic work here in the Chicagoland area, I wonder what does village mean there?
Yeah, it's been pretty incredible to enter this world. And I think Chicago is sort of known nationally as having a very interconnected group of philanthropists and really thinking about how development in one area can support development in another area and linking arms to do that most effectively. I think from a Polk Brothers point of view, we are in the midst of launching some new core goals, and it's really about building a Chicago that can thrive and where everyone can live with dignity and with a sense of agency over their own future. And I think your point on connecting issue areas. So we have three big goals we are looking at. One is how do we close the life expectancy gap in Chicago? So you may know that, from one neighborhood to another, there may be a 30-year life expectancy gap in Chicago. And how do we begin to close that gap and have healthy, thriving communities no matter where you live in the city? How do you build community wealth across generations? So, and all of these are interconnected, right? So, if you have healthy, thriving communities and you have family sustaining wage opportunities and you have a sense of social cohesion, right? Like all of these pieces connect. And then the third is really fostering a participatory, multiracial democracy. And we know that's at the root of everyone feeling they have a voice in their future and a voice in their communities. And we see that, happening right now. So we are very much trying to weave together all of those pieces of our incredible city that we live in and um, figuring out, how we can make sure that we are funding where we can support those interactions.
Karen, I'm wondering, with your work and your experience, where have you seen this concept of village activated in a unique way that really stands out in your mind? That really, again, it's just kind of one of those instances where you saw folks coming together in service to community, in service to young people and families. That for whatever reason, again, just leaves a lasting impression upon you. A little storytelling is what we're looking for here.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I think there are a couple of things that came to mind for me. One is really just the current moment we're in, right? This is an incredible, heavy time in our city and in our country, and it Chicago has this long history of people coming together to care for one another, right? It's in our DNA as a city, and I feel like we are seeing that come to life now and become a national model of what that really looks like. And schools have been an example of this for such a long time, but literally seeing neighbors lining the street to make sure young people have safe passage to their schools. We're seeing mutual aid groups sort of bubbling up all over our city. At my local high school, there was a food drive just a couple weeks ago where people literally were in line for hours to drop off food, right? And we filled the entire athletic field house with food for neighbors. And I think there's just such incredible energy to act as a village and make sure that we are thinking about the needs of everyone in our communities. So I think I am buoyed by seeing that in our city right now. And shared humanity is being modeled and needed to for our young people to see that happening. I think when I think about my work and when I've really seen the village come to life, I think one piece, and I think you lived through this too, was in Chicago Public Schools when we really came together to relook at the discipline policy in our schools, and that we saw very clearly this was not serving young people, that we were um, removing young people from schools and from classrooms in ways that were racially disproportionate, that were very extreme, and we were not focused on learning, right, and on shared humanity and community. So we made an effort to reform that policy, and that really was a village effort, right? We had incredible community organizations, from restorative justice organizations to mental health organizations to teaching and learning organizations. We had our teachers union and we had our central office, all coming together to say, look, this data is not a pretty picture and we can do better. And really co-crafting new policy, which I don't think happens often, right? And thinking about what are the alternatives? How do we build up a sense of connection and make discipline part of the learning that is happening, rather than a way to remove students from school? If students struggle on a math test, we don't kick you out of math, right? We say, let's do some more math together. So we were trying to create climates of inviting, supportive climates. So we came up with school climate standards that now stand for the whole district. We came up with a new discipline policy together. We pushed in incredible resources and mentoring and coaching around restorative justice and school climate and social emotional learning, and made sure our academic piece was engaging. And the work continues. It was not perfect, but I think we really felt that village in each individual school and classroom, and then as a city as a whole, to really have a sea change in thinking about what do we want for our young people in terms of their schools.
Yeah, just super fascinated. Thank you for that. I think it's just something about being able to hear those stories, literally you sharing the narrative of a schoolhouse full of groceries, knowing that we're in a time where, some of the people supplemental assistance, if you will,
Yeah.
is being compromised. I can feel that. I can see it in my mind's eye.
Yeah.
So yeah, really appreciate you for taking us on that journey. Karen, I am at the point in our segment whereas I am giving you your magic wand. You literally have your wand in hand, thinking of all of the amazing, again, experiences and just opportunities, that professional opportunities and professional positions that you share with us. You have this wand. We have the village in mind. We all are in agreement that there's power in the village being resourced and activated. You take the wand, and what would you do with said wand if there was one thing that you can change, enhance, see improved, so that we even see more energy, more impact being made by quote unquote the village coming together in support of communities? How are you activating that wand? What are you directing that wand energy at?
So I think, if you walk into an average school right now, it looks very similar to what it may have looked like decades ago. And if I had the magic powers, I would say, let's figure out how to transform our schools. So, how do we create a more fluid experience? So, students are moving from classrooms to maybe an apprenticeship to their sports team to their musical performance, and they're seeing the skills that are transferable in all of those spaces and seeing their own development. Maybe they leave with a portfolio of their learning, of their experiences, and I think more importantly, a sense of their own purpose, a sense of their own belonging and identity, and that would be my hope for the evolution of schools in our city and everywhere. So.
Yeah, what are your thoughts about artificial intelligence? And yeah, and I'll make that very general and broad just to see what your thoughts are there.
It's a great question. I think there is a lot of potential and there's a lot of danger, right? I think, you know, from my point of view, there's incredible potential to use an artificial intelligence to open up the space for more human connection, more relevance and engagement. I think there's a lot of transactional, challenging pieces of the work of teachers, administrators that, if we could use AI to help build high school schedules, like the amount of hours that are spent on building high school schedules, right? If we can use AI to help us differentiate lessons in meaningful ways, but then use that time and space to have the level of engagement and connection that we are hoping for in our classrooms, I think there's a lot of potential there. I think, keeping this in more of the adult-facing realm right now makes a lot of sense as we continue to test what it looks like in the student-facing realm. I think yet just yesterday, I was hearing from some leaders in higher ed that are using AI to provide, 24/7 coaching, counseling for students around their needs, and then that connects them to humans later. And, I think there's a lot of potential there, but I think we need to tread lightly and to figure out how it can actually be used as a tool for more human connection, not less.
Yeah, no, I greatly appreciate that. As you know, I'm tinkering with the tool that is AI enabled. And to your point, I just wanted to be very careful and cautious
Yep.
as it pertains to what does it look like to have a student facing tool
Mhm.
and to say, hey, let's first tinker, let's first develop
Yep.
with this just being with adults for right now. And also being like super careful, of course, with what type of student data, right? And what
Yeah.
that looks
Right.
like to be put into the system. And then when you put those things, where is that going?
Yep.
And who's
Yep.
who's privy to those details? So no, I appreciate the insights there. So Karen, let me tell you, and I said it on the front end because I knew it was going to be just as exciting as the best roller coaster ride that I've been on. And by the way, for me, it's the Superman roller coaster. This felt like that.
Nice. Wow. I'll take that as a compliment, hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah, it was exhilarating. Just kind of having my mind massaged as you were just kind of giving your insight on certain things here. So thank you. There's a couple of things, Karen, by way of us landing this plane in an effective way, and the best way I can imagine is number one, if there's just Anything top of mind that you would like to share with our viewing audience, which is a blend of nonprofit leaders, educators, parents who make up this village of mentor figures who care about kids, who care about community? What parting words would you offer? And as a part of that as well, we would love to know if folks would love to just kind of follow your work. Where's the best way where we can do that? Maybe the best social media profile that allows us to keep in touch with you.
Great. Yeah. I mean, I think in terms of parting words, I think the more that we can not see human development as separate, right? I think the more that we can, you don't have to choose between, oh, but do we want our young people to do well academically, or do we want them to be cared for social emotionally, or do we want them to be developed in that way? The more we can understand that those are very much interconnected, and it's a false narrative that we have to choose between these. So I think successful mentorship, successful school, successful parenting looks like when we bring all these pieces together, and that we need young people's voice in that. We need them as leaders, and the more we listen to what they need and what they're saying, the stronger we will be. And happy to connect with folks. I am now at the Polk Brothers Foundation, so you can find us at Polk Brothers, PolkBrosFDN.org. And if you look on LinkedIn or Facebook, we've got a space there. So you can follow. We'll be launching our new grant making in just a few months, and looking forward to connecting to folks who care about Chicago, who care about young people, and who care about making sure our communities are thriving. So this has been such a treat, Damien.
All right, all right. Well, thank you, Karen, for being our guest. Thank you, yeah, just for all of the knowledge, to counsel, and the words of wisdom that were shared in this space. That last piece of helping folks to understand, even that there's like a new grant making cycle that's opening up for folks who care about the city. I think there's a lot of people in our village that would be intrigued by that. So appreciate that share out as well. All right, y'all. This has been another segment of Village Talks. I know that I continue to grow and learn from each segment that we have. And hopefully the same is true for you all, the folks who are saying, hey, I am in a mindset that I don't need to be isolated. I don't need to be alone when it comes to like really doing what I can to help kids, helping even my kid, the parents who are here, the educators who are here, and you don't. And that is exactly why these segments exist. That is exactly why any of the work I have my hands on exists. So Karen helped you all to understand, if you want to connect with Polk Brothers, how to do that. I am on all of the socials as well, and would love to continue this conversation, and would love to continue to have you as somebody who's leaning in as a part of our village building work. All right, that's Village Talks, our most recent segment. Y'all, peace out.